Well, it's been a while. Chris and I have been trying to get together for an interview for quite a while. I am with Chris Fossek here in Santa Barbara. Both of us live in this beautiful, beautiful city. Chris is a guitarist. He is a flamenco Mediterranean guitarist. We're going to talk about that. His first CD, it's called Camino Cielo. He and I know what that, and everybody in Santa Barbara knows what that means. But we're going to ask Chris to explain that to the others. on the who live elsewhere than Santa Barbara. This is really an amazing first, as I mentioned, first CD, Camino Cielo. Just amazing, and I guess what I'm trying to say is my mind is blown away by the level of music making that I see and hear now, listening to all these CDs from so many artists all over the country and the world, and boy, you're right up there. So I'm proud as punch that you're a Santa Barbaran. That the level of music making is where it is with here in Santa Barbara, as it is all over the world and country. It's an amazing world of music out there. So let's get started, Chris. I've got to ask you. I know a little bit about your family. Your mom is an artist. She painted in 12 and a half minutes an absolutely magnificent portrait of me during a particular kind of exercise. That's where right. Artists from Santa Barbara came together and did quick portraitures. But she's an accomplished, major artist. Your dad, tell me, please, because I can never, is he a physicist, a rocket scientist, what?
No, he was an English professor his entire career.
Sorry.
And so he's a poet and a literature buff, and also happens to be passionate about the pipe organ. So he's very much a musician himself.
But the point is somehow I got the wrong impression. There was something about astrophysics or something. But he's a raging intellectual. Can I say
yes.
that? Yes. Okay, good.
Sure.
And your mom is an absolutely brilliant, right up there. Painter here in Santa Barbara, amongst the major artists in this region. And then there you are. Now, how come? What is it? You're an only child. I think you are, right?
I actually have two siblings.
Holy! I got that one wrong.
Surprise!
we're doing 2 minutes in, and I've got at least 3 questions wrong. So, tell me.
Yeah. So I have an older brother.
Yeah.
Who is here in Santa Barbara as well, and he is also a very fine artist. Amazing. Line thinker. His drawings and his paintings are beautiful, but his main thing is that he's in the wine industry here. So he's also a sommelier and works at a wine bar, and so I definitely benefit from my relationship with him. And then my younger sister is also an artist, and she paints as well, and is an art history professor, and she's lives up in Santa Maria, so not too far away.
Okay, so the whole point of my question, I remember vaguely that I was the freak of my own family, being a classical musician. What is it like to live in a family that is so creative, so exciting, and so on? And then segue that, please, into what was it? What gave you flamenco, Mediterranean style? What gave you the guitar?
Okay.
What was that about?
Well, growing up, I guess the first answer to the first question is for me it was normal.
They all say that.
Yeah. I remember being a kid and my mom didn't have a painting studio that she could use because it was technically the family room for the family. So she would paint in the kitchen because the light is good. So I'd grow up, waking up and having breakfast and eating cereal while she's painting away and watching her mix the colors, and that was just normal to see that happening. And then I guess that's maybe what we all think of our families is just that they are where they are. So, but it was definitely fun, and of course they're very encouraging of anything that's any artistic endeavor that we chose to do. That's also very nice. And then how that segued into flamenco was really kind of strange and a surprise for me. I'd always liked what I heard and knew about flamenco growing up in Santa Barbara, but it wasn't that much. And I grew up more as a classical musician, studying piano as a young kid. And I moved to Italy eventually to study more classical music. That eventually I needed a break from that, and I moved to Spain to take some time off. And in Spain was where I discovered more flamenco and just got into it for fun as a relaxing way to play music, a little stress-free, music, and then from there I just never looked back and don't play piano anymore and just guitar.
When did
So
guitar come up in your life,
it came
age-wise?
up much later. So I didn't really get serious about playing, and by serious I mean really taking it on, playing guitar and definitely the style of flamenco and classical guitar until I was about 24. So
Very interesting.
I had a lot of catching up to do technically on the instrument, but growing up playing music was I kind of knew what I needed to do in order
Yeah.
to get into it.
Yeah, and you had
So
some kind of piano background. It's not as though they're
yeah,
identical, but they're, you know what I
exactly.
mean. There was a
Well, and
musical
I'd done all the
thing.
theory and musicianship
Yeah,
classes and
yeah,
stuff like that. So, and I was composing a lot
yeah.
for keyboard music.
And by the way, you and I talked a little bit before we started. We're both CalArts
Yeah,
types.
that's
Go figure. I
Gallards.
can't believe it. I had no idea all these years. So, what did CalArts help you kind of get your life a little better organized, or worse? You never know at CalArts.
Maybe both. No, CalArts was a great place, and I didn't know about it until a friend of my cousin's who had gone there. I told him what I was looking to do because I moved back to California to try to get more serious about studying guitar, and he said, "Well, you got to check out CalArts." And so I said, "Okay, sounds good." I went there and met this guy who teaches there named Miroslav Tadic, who is an amazing guitar player, one of my favorite musicians, just a great, sensitive, creative player who mixes all different kinds of styles of playing, and he definitely is my mentor in that sense. Huge influence on me, and it was just not enough time to stay there, to study there. Um, but yeah, CalArts was a great experience, and I met a lot of friends that I play music with
Yeah.
today from there. So.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier because the CD has some of your colleagues on it. Why don't you just kind of let's have a little overview of the people that help you that help
Yeah,
perform with you
it
on this CD,
features
Camino Cielo.
features Peter Slocum on saxophone, and he was in the
Nice.
jazz department at CalArts, which is they have a great
Yeah.
jazz department there. And so we met there and hung out. Didn't play a lot of music while we were at CalArts together.
That's
He,
interesting. I didn't do a whole lot either when I was at CalArts except play around. It was pretty crazy. Anyway, go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry, none of you heard that. None of you. Especially those people at CalArts that I owe
none of that
favors
stuff
to.
happened.
Yeah, nothing at all. But
Uh,
it was an amazing, just to help get me anyway, out of a doghouse. It was an amazing free world,
yeah,
amazing
uh,
space. That's why I went there.
especially in the early years of CalArts, it sounded. I mean, I heard stories about it. It sounded great, and it's
I was there.
to survive. So you remember or don't.
I do. I remember. Yeah, exactly. I remember Christmas Urine, January 23, whatever, December 23, 24, 25. I thought it was the greatest art exhibit I'd ever seen. Go ahead.
Uh-huh. Well, so Peter, we met at CalArts, became friends there, but he later, after graduating with getting his bachelor's degree, moved to Santa Barbara. And when he moved here, we started playing a lot of gigs together all over town and in the wine country, and that's when we started forming this duo, so to speak, that we have. Um, it just kind of worked out great, which this mix of the flamenco style and adding in the jazz and improvisational elements to that, as well as also the Macedonian side of the Balkan side of the music that I got inspired by studying with Miroslav. So it's kind of a mix. That's why I call it the Mediterranean. It's a lot. It's heavily flamenco inspired, but also Balkan, and maybe the arrangements of those are more of a jazz approach with a head melody and then improvising and going back to the head, and
That's why I
everything's
said
just kind of mixed together.
that's
So
kind of why I said to you a few days ago something about this is so unique. In that it's such an amazing mix of styles and persuasions and interests and colors, and yet at the same time, from an historical point of view, it's all about history, really. The Moorish influence, the Spanish flamenco influence, the
Gypsy.
Eastern. I mean, when we finally settle down, we'll realize we're all one and the same on this planet of human beings. So I hope that'll happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But so the album is very, very unique, and I want to ask you about the recording studio, because the quality of the recording of on your CD, the level of subtlety, the clarity, all of that stuff that I'm listening to more carefully than ever before is there, and it's about this studio here in Santa Barbara, Beagle Studios. I think I remember that, or is it fairly recent? Has it been around a long? Beagle Studios in Montecito.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been around. I know that it's Emmett Sargent is the guy who it's his studio, and I think the location could be a number. He's basically the studio. As you know, we mixed ours. It wasn't planned, but up by Camino Cielo, right off the 154. So I don't know if he's still working out of that space, but he's great, and he definitely helped a lot with the mastering. The recording and the initial mixing I did right here in this
it's amazing.
Fine, interesting
in this
space.
This room. That's the brilliance of making music these days, recording music these days. You can really do a lot in a small space, if you will.
Well, especially something like guitar. Guitar is, and the nylon string guitar is a very quiet instrument, so as long as you have a quiet space and good microphones and you kind of know what you're after, you can get a good recording of the guitar pretty easily.
You've made a point. I hope I'm not exaggerating, but in a way you have pictures. There's also a wonderful video I'm putting up at the site. By the way, my review of your recording that we've been waiting for with bated breath since forever, it seems, will go up shortly at performingartsreview.net, and where you're going to, those of you who are watching are going to find some videos. You have some videos of some of the pieces from the CD. You have all this good stuff. But what I'm trying to get at is, was it just a device, or is there something more about Camino Cielo? I'm not trying to bait you for something highly intellectual, but what is that?
Well, it's a good question, and I think it's a bit of both, because people want names for things. Sometimes a piece of music is just a feeling that comes from you, and it's hard to describe, but in order to connect with somebody, they want to have a name. You need a name, and sometimes the name, you start with the name, and that it inspires the piece. In this case, growing up in Santa Barbara, I grew up biking a lot, cycling, and spending a lot of time biking up the mountains to Camino Cielo and going across Camino Cielo, and I've always loved that road. It's a special place in that you can look down to one side and see Santa Barbara, the ocean, the islands, that whole air that's particular to Santa Barbara, and then you look down the other side, and sometimes it's just, you've been on Camino Cielo, that it's just 20 feet wide, and you can look down on the other side and you see the Santa Ynez Valley, which has a totally separate climate. It's the wine country, drier, and when you're on Camino Cielo, you get that fluctuation of the Santa Barbara Pacific Ocean air, the Santa Ynez wind, and they go back and forth right there, and that resonated a lot with the vibe and the emotion that I wanted for that particular song, which is the title track. So I named the album Camino Cielo, also because I like the sound of it, and it's a Spanish name that goes along with the style of music to some degree, and also where I'm from, and so all those components.
Perfetto.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just a couple of tunes, because we on the CD, because you mentioned these. By the way, this is all your original music, with the exception, I suppose, of the Macedonian tunes that we've mentioned, that you then, of course, freely improvise around, presumably. Yeah. So it's a original music, lots of free improvisation. Stop me if I'm wrong. And some really beautiful stuff. But you told me earlier about Olímpico, the first track. Tell me the story of Olímpico. And by the way, the musicians that are involved in that opened the CD for you. Wonderful musicians.
So the song itself on the CD features Peter Slocum on saxophone, Nate Kieser on cajon, Kai Kurosawa on bass, who is also another Calarshan, and then guitar. And that song it's a pretty simple rumba, which makes it fun. So the improvisation that's happening in the album is mostly from Peter Slocum on saxophone. So I would get him in the studio and just say, play, take a couple takes, and then that was pretty much it. I mean, he's great, so he just throws it down. The stuff that I'm doing on on the more the solo pieces that are, I would say, on the CD are more improvisationally inspired compositions. So while improvising on those songs, sometimes I come across some ideas that I really liked, and then I would refine those a bit and put those on the CD. So the stuff that I'm doing isn't quite as improvised on the recordings, but those pieces, when I play them live, I'm always trying to do something a little bit different with them.
Sure.
So that's that aspect of it. But going back to Olimpico, that song was born when I moved back to Italy from Spain after learning that I liked flamenco. Met some really good friends in Italy that are from Huelva, Spain, that are flamenco players. Hooked up with them. They had some dancers. We were doing shows for fun. My brother, who was also living in Italy, was having an art show one day. Met an Italian rock star by the name of Biagio Antonacci, who's a great Italian pop rock star. And my brother befriended him. We all lived in the same town, Bologna. And he was having a big show in Rome in the Olympic Stadium and said, "Chris, why don't you come and bring 2 of your dancers and play halfway through the concert?" And I said, "Okay, well, what should we play?" This song. At the time, it didn't have a name. It was just the rumba. And but then once it came time to name it, I thought, I'm going to name this Olimpico after the experience of playing in the Olympic Stadium for 20,000 rock star fans.
The pre-show, it's great.
Probably thought, what the heck is this?
What about Drunken Horse? I have to ask. I loved it.
Drunken Horse. Okay, well, thank you. That's
by the way, palmas. You're very good.
Yeah, thanks.
It's palmas.
It's it's in the studio you can layer them, so it's fun to
secrets.
Put the lay down. Yeah, and I have the help of a friend, Hugo Aguayo, who's also another Cal-Artian, studied with me there, guitar player. Drunken Horse is named Drunken Horse because it's inspired. Well, it's the form of that piece is a bulería, so it's very much a flamenco form. And a bulería is a fast 12-beat form.
Yeah, the forms are very complicated.
Yeah,
and meter-wise, yeah.
It's one of the towns in Spain that's famous for, very well known for bulerías is Huelva. Jerez de la Frontera. Okay. So Jerez de la Frontera is down, just north of Cádiz. And Jerez is famous for it's probably famous for many things, but 3 main things. I went there to visit for the bulerías. It's also famous for the sherry. Jerez sherry, and it's famous for their horses. Okay. And when you're there's something about the rhythm of the bulería that really reminds me of the sound and the rhythm of listening to a horse trot. So it's a very driving rhythm. It sounds like the hooves of a horse. And I had this idea of if a horse were drunk, it would be stumbling around, not quite so in time, but not falling over. So the time of that piece is still, it's a very strict bulería, but it kind of, the phrasing of the guitar kind of comes and stumbles through the song. And there's this idea of, the soundtrack of playing for a drunken horse or being, the legs of a drunken horse. And then there's also aspects of it that just kind of imitate the sounds that horses make, like the neigh and stuff like that. So that's why it's called the Drunken Horse.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. And 2, I want to ask about because they are so intimate. From Water to Wind and Wa Habibi. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly.
Yeah,
Beloved.
Habibi. Exactly.
You want to touch on those 2? Inspiration.
Sure. From Water to Wind is I almost view that as an intro to Checo's dance, which is why I put it right before. And when I play it live, I start with From Water to Wind into Checo's dance. But I originally wrote that song actually for an album that I did with a friend of mine. His name is Nicholas Gunn, who's a flute player. And we did a bunch of pieces together on one of his albums. And I wrote that for his album initially, I think. And I was thinking, okay, well, there's the wind aspect of playing flute, and then there's also this transition of starting with guitar and going into the flute, and I think of similar to actually Camino Cielo, which is this one that is this transitional. You can stand in one spot, and there's the Santa Barbara that transitions to San Ynez. When water evaporates, the surface. There is if you're underwater, you're definitely in the water. If you're above water, you're in the air or the wind. But there is that transitional spot where water becomes wind, whether it's evaporating in that boundary that's there. But if you are right in it, maybe you both. That's kind of the feeling that I have from water to wind. It's that moment that when does water become wind? When does guitar playing become flute? When do we transition from one phase to the next?
Stop.
That's the inspiration there.
Stop.
Okay.
Mom, Dad, are you happy? You've raised a highly intelligent, brilliant musician. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you, but
not at all.
But in a way, you also express what it's all about for all of us. We're not just writing tunes. We're writing narratives. We're talking about experience and so on in all forms of art of any kind. So that was brilliant. Let me just try and cool down a bit. And now, what about Wah Habibi?
Okay, so then Wah Habibi goes back to also the Mediterranean vibe. So not just being strictly within a flamenco tradition or a Balkan tradition, but basically the commonality of what I feel I'm inspired by musically is the connection to the Mediterranean. And just so happens that my wife, Lila, her mom is from Lebanon, born in a town called Enfi, which is literally, she was born 20 feet from the Mediterranean.
Intriguing. I had no idea. By the way, Lila, your wife, is a former premier dancer for State Street Ballet, and now is an associate director of the company. I mean, how artsy can it get? And we'll talk a little bit, because we're going to get to the solos, Bill Solo's music in a minute. One of my favorite choreographers. But go ahead. Sorry, finish the thought.
Okay, so
that's interesting about Lila's mom. I had no idea.
Yeah, and just thinking about, I would like to arrange some music that is from that area, from Lebanon. It's a beautiful area, and she gave me a CD by a famous Lebanese singer named Fairuz. Absolutely gorgeous singer, and very famous in Lebanon. And I was listening to it, and I heard this song, Wah Habibi, that she arranged, and it's My Beloved. It's a Good Friday song, and the melodic, the melody, and the way she sang there was, just loved that. Thought that I could arrange that in some way for guitar and capture the elements of her singing style to some degree. It's hard on a fretted instrument, but I just wanted to do something from that area to honor her mom, and also it's a beautiful piece of music, and its origins are actually, I think, like medieval Italian. I did some research on it. It's an old hymn style piece, but
the connections in Europe that go way back are so interesting. The French connection to so much of Europe, and on and on and on, because I've been, of course, getting ready for Portugal coming up, and it's just amazing. I had no idea the French influence was so powerful in Portugal, of all places. And so on. We're getting running a little tight, but it's so wonderful. I want to deal with William Solo, the incredible choreographer who's made so many marvelous pieces for State Street Ballet over the years, and I remember very vividly. In fact, I even looked up the review of American the piece of choreography based on the paintings of American Mark Rothko, and you, of course, are involved in that. You stand about 7 feet. What are you? How tall are you? It's hard to miss
That's
you.
correct. 8 feet.
But it's hard to miss you on a stage with ballet dancers around, because you stand at least a couple feet above them all, playing guitar. And this on the CD, the result is this wonderful suite of pieces from the ballet solos that you call Solo's Canvas. And I know from speaking with Bill Solo over many years, he's a nut about music. I mean, he's one of those choreographers that knows how important music is. Just give me a little overview. What was that relationship like? How much freedom did he give you? I presume plenty. Lonely blue, in deep red, these colors, a zealous brush, edge of indigo. What is all that about, this suite that ends your CD?
Yeah, so he asked me to do the music for. He had this idea, and he said, uh, I think it was at one of the State Street Ballet galas that they have, and I was playing music for the cocktail hour, and he's standing there looking at me, and I think, oh, he's thinking something. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I can tell he's thinking. And then later he said, I want to have you do the music for a dance that he could choreograph, and he had this idea that he wanted to do it inspired by the paintings and the writings of Rothko, do a series of patadas and then a finale. And we thought, okay, well, each one can represent in his ballet a loving relationship, but at different stages of love. So there's like young love, maybe love that has tragedy, and then an old love. Those different stages that a couple goes through in a loving relationship. And the piece for dance is called Canvas.
Thank you.
I wrote a bunch of ideas. We worked together with the music. Each said, this piece works better. Let's work on that one. And some of the pieces that I had come up with we didn't use for the ballet, but those are on the CD.
Yeah.
So to honor him, in a sense, I wanted to put all the music ideas on there because they came from us working together, and he's a very inspiring man, as you know, and
a very sweet man too.
Yeah, and
very sweet guy.
Great to be around, and so a lot of that music he's responsible. He's a part of.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's why I wanted to call it Solo's Canvas after him.
Absolutely.
And those names, they are to some degree just based off the fact that it's inspired by paintings of Rothko.
Sure.
But also, like the green reflection was the one that was for the young love. So it's the green being the young, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And how long have you been married to Lila? 2 years, 3 years?
We just celebrated 5.
5 already? Holy
God.
Like that. So you know all about this stuff.
Well, getting started. Yeah.
We're getting started anyway. Yeah, it's fabulous.
Feels like it's the beginning. So.
But a wonderful beginning, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's an incredible marriage you have. Let's see, what have I forgotten to ask you? There was one last thing. Just so everybody knows, we're running a little more, but I think it's worth it.
Okay. Tell
me about the life, because you are in Santa Barbara, California, a couple 100,000. We're not talking 3 million. You're clubbing around. You're doing gigs here, there, and everywhere. Just give we're mostly musicians that are watching this, but just give me an idea of how it's working for you.
Well, Santa Barbara's fortunately a great place for me and what I do with the guitar, because I can there's a lot of people come. It's a small town, but a lot of people come here for events and a lot of places to play, a lot of parties, occasions to gig, basically. So I'm really busy here. I don't know if that would be the case in another town. Definitely not a town this size, but being close to LA is also nice. Yeah. And gives me the chance to work on my music as a living. I don't do anything else, and then I can also organize concerts as well. So, and speaking of which, I'm organizing a big concert on August 10th at the New Vic Theater. I'll plug it.
Listen to that, shameless, absolutely shameless.
Be Chris and friends at the New Vic.
Wow, on August 10th. And for those of you watching from Southern California that might want to come up, the New Vic is a magnificent theater space. Ensemble Theater's new theater, as in whatever, it's been 3 or 4 years now. Beautiful, beautiful space. It's being used a lot for music, dance, all kinds of good things. So. Yeah. Give me the dates again. August 11th?
August 10th, Friday.
August 10th. Sorry,
One
let's
night.
Try it again. Friday, August 10. Yeah. What time?
It's 8 p.m.
Okay, good. Do I ask about tickets?
Too.
I don't know. I'd have to charge you extra if I ask about tickets. But anyway, it should be a treat. People can come up and have a meal and then catch this concert. And it's you and how many friends that we may have heard on the CD?
I have Peter Slocum on saxophone, Nate Keyser on cajon from the album.
That's 2 so far.
So far, a good friend of mine, Paul Merkello, who's a very classical trumpet player.
Wow.
So we have a duo project together that's a bit different, and really fun, great. I can compose anything for him, and he'll play it. So it's really fun and satisfying in that sense. So he's going to be involved, and then Lila and James Folsom is another dancer with the ballet, the come out and do a couple numbers. So
wow, huge, wonderful. Chris, we're talking about your CD Camino Cielo and a million other things, and my review will be coming out very, very soon. Hang on, don't hold your breath, but it'll come out very, very soon. We got all the pictures up, all the rest of it, the videos, all the things from the album ready to go at performingartsreview.net. Great pleasure finally to be able to chat with you, and
I feel like we could chat for hours, just like no problem.
I thank you very, very much for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see you.